Have you ever wondered how you can tell a story about survival without a single word of dialogue? I mean, how do you actually show an internal battle on screen? Well, today we're going to deconstruct a series of cinematic prompts that do exactly that. They create this powerful visual language for resilience. Okay, let's dive right in.
So, this one line is really the heart of everything we're talking about today. It's the whole journey we're about to map out, visually, frame by frame. And it's not just about showing pain or just showing strength. The real magic is in capturing that exact powerful moment of transformation between the two. So, this is where we get into the nitty-gritty, the visual language of survival itself. We're going to see how artists can use things like light, shadow, composition, even color to tell that whole complicated internal story, from being in the dark to finding a way to heal, all inside a single, powerful picture. And this is the big question for us, isn't it? It's not just about what you show, it's all about how you show it. How do you actually make an audience feel a character's shift from total despair to a glimmer of hope? The prompts we're looking at, well, they give us a pretty brilliant blueprint.
Okay, so to really appreciate the strength, you first have to understand the struggle. I mean, before any light can break through, we've got to sit in the darkness for a moment. So let's take a look at how these prompts build this really consistent and powerful visual vocabulary for emotional pain. What's so fascinating here is just how specific and, universal these visual cues are. The prompts call for a dark background, that classic moody shot of rain outside a window, and that very closed-off posture of hugging her knees. Come on, we've all seen that in movies. These aren't just random details. They're basically an emotional shorthand that we all instantly understand means sadness and isolation. And right away, the prompts set up the core conflict of the whole story with this one simple but super powerful contrast. Dark background slowly fading into warm light. Think about that. This is so much more than a lighting change. It's the entire emotional arc of the story, all summarized in one visual gradient. This is the battlefield where the whole story is going to unfold. All right, so we've established the darkness. We get the visual language of the struggle. But the real heart of this story is in the transition. How do we go from that dark place to a place of strength? Well, this next section is all about that one crucial moment, that pivot point where everything starts to shift from despair towards hope. Now get this. In these prompts, light is never just, light. It's basically an active character in the story. It touches her face, it enters the room. Light is the first sign that something is changing. It's the catalyst that starts to break through all that darkness we just saw. It literally represents the possibility of a new beginning. Okay, but here's the tricky part, right? It's one thing for light to just show up in a room. That can represent external hope. But the real moment of resilience, the big one, that's an internal decision. It's a choice. So how on earth do you put that on screen? How do you film a choice? And this is how. It's absolutely brilliant. Prompt 6, which is literally titled She Chose to Live, it just breaks it down for us. First, she stands alone, and she faces the sunrise. That's a deliberate action. Second, you add wind in her hair. That gives you movement, a sense of life, of freedom. And third, her expression just seals the deal. It's not just strength, it's courage and peace. It's a perfect sequence that takes this abstract idea and makes it a real, concrete, cinematic moment. Choosing to live is that huge turning point, but it's definitely not the end of the story. The journey of healing, that's a process, right? It keeps going. So let's see how the prompts visualize what comes next.
I absolutely love this concept of symbolic scars. Prompt 4 calls for a close-up on a person's hands, but it's very specific. It needs a gentle atmosphere and soft light. So the point here isn't to hide the past pain, but to totally reframe it. The scars are there, you can see them, but they're shown in a context of calm and recovery. That tells us they're part of a story about healing, not just a story about trauma.
And it's really important to remember that up to this point, even with this idea of healing, the whole journey has been intensely personal. We've been focused on a single girl, standing alone, facing all of her struggles by herself. That composition, just one person isolated, that's a very deliberate choice. The story begins with one, and then a massive shift happens. Prompt 5 takes the story from being about an individual to being about a collective. Multiple soft silhouettes of girls standing together, with this warm glow connecting them. I mean, that's just a beautiful visual metaphor for a shared experience. It tells us that healing isn't always found in isolation. A lot of times it's found in community, and knowing you're not alone.
The story becomes so much bigger than just one person.
So we've walked through the struggle, we've seen the turning point, and we've explored the healing. Now let's pull all of this together into a clear toolkit, the essential palette for any storyteller out there who wants to show this kind of emotional journey visually.
This framework just brings it all home so perfectly. You've got light, and that's your agent of hope and change. You have the color gradient going from dark to warm, and that maps out the entire emotional journey. The character's gaze shows us what's going on inside, from looking down to facing the sunrise. And finally, composition tells that story of moving from isolation to connection, from one person to a group. It's a really powerful and honestly efficient visual grammar.
And if you want to see this whole palette in its absolute purest form, you don't have to look any further than Prompt 7. It was designed as a background, so it strips away the characters and just leaves the emotional core. Soft moving light, dark to warm gradient, subtle particles floating. That's it. That's the entire emotional journey. Hope, transformation, and life, all distilled down into its most basic visual parts. It's just amazing.
You know, at the end of the day, this visual language works so well because it taps into something totally universal about how we all relate to light and darkness. It makes you think about your own turning points, your own sources of hope. So I'll leave you with this question. In the movie of your own life, what story does light tell?